arrested and being faced with this 35-year sentence, what was that like for you?
I started getting arrested when I was 10 years old. I decided that I was going to try to break out and get out, get my daughter, and flee the country.
And then you ended up spending how long in jail?
A total of 16 years, 16 and a half.
16 and a half years. Today with me, we have Quawntay Boscoe Adams. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate you coming, Boscoe, and just your story is inspiring to see what you've come from and to see where you're at. It's amazing. So, I really want to begin in childhood. You were saying that you feel like, being in the streets and dealing drugs was your only opportunity. What was childhood like for you?
Observing nothing but crime, gangs, drugs, growing up in Compton in the 80s and 90s, and that culture of gang violence and crack epidemic, that's all I saw. And so to me, success as a Black man hung on being either a drug dealer or a gangbanger. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything else. Mm.
Were your parents or anyone close to you in that as well?
Yeah, my entire family was involved in that lifestyle. Mm. I think I only had one out of my grandmother had 8 kids and only one held a legitimate job.
Mm. Wow. So thinking back about your childhood and everything that led up to your incarceration, I want to know what was those moments leading up to being arrested and being faced with this 35-year sentence. What was that like for you?
It was crazy thing is it was normal because I had become used to being arrested. I started getting arrested when I was 10 years old and going in and out of the juvenile criminal justice system. And so as an adult, it was normal. I was accustomed to being locked up and being arrested. So as an adult, it didn't impact me as much as it would impact any other person. But later, when I was sentenced to 35 years for marijuana and I found out that I had a child on the way, is when I started realizing it started hitting me, because at that point I had somebody else to live for. So it wasn't just about me. If I didn't have a child on the way, I probably would have just stuck it out and fell right back into the system and, been a prison boss or gang leader or something. But the fact that I had a child and the fact that I grew up without my father and my father got caught up in the criminal justice system and was taken away from me, I didn't want to repeat that cycle. And I always told myself that if I had a child, I would do things differently. And so when I found myself in prison, repeating the cycle, I started feeling like a loser. And so I had to make a decision on whether I was going to be a loser and just sit in jail and let my child be out there without a father, or if I was going to change my life and do something differently.
You had to be the generational curse breaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I want to know, because so many people that have a sentence like that go to jail and experience incarceration. A lot of times, even when they get out, they're stuck in the same cycle and it does something to you mentally. Kind of walk us through some of the hardest days that you've had when you were in jail.
The hardest days was just not being able to be productive and be there for my daughter. Those were by far the hardest days. Nothing else really mattered because, again, I was used to prison life. So I've seen all the violence, all of the suicides, and all of the negative energy that comes with being confined inside of prison. So I was sort of desensitized to it. But what I wasn't desensitized to was I always had this knack of being productive and being responsible. And so the days where I realized that I wasn't able to be there for my child or that I wasn't being productive, those were the hardest days for me. Mm.
So one of the biggest reasons that your story has shed so much light, there's been so much light shed on your story, was that you've had one of the most ingenious breakouts of jail.
Yeah.
And it seems like that was all stemming from wanting to be with your daughter. Let's talk about the moment that you decided you wanted to break out of jail. What was that like, going through that, trying to get out to see her? And when you did get out, what was that like?
Are we talking about the first time or the time that, because there were several different escape attempts. There were several of them. The one that gained a lot of attention was the one when I was locked in a cell 24 hours a day with the camera in it. Mm-hmm. And that was like my third time trying to escape. But before that, I had a couple, so I had got used to trying to break out of prison. It was normal for me. And one thing is, so the first time I decided that I was going to escape is I was in general population. And again, I started feeling like a loser. And I didn't want to sit in prison for the rest of my life with the child out there. So I decided that I was going to try to break out and get out, get my daughter, and flee the country. Because the United States is not the only country for a Black person. There's other countries out there that we can live a lot better than we can here. And so that was my plan. But I got caught and I was placed in solitary confinement. And in solitary confinement, I tried again. And after that, they transferred me to this maximum security and locked me in a cell 24 hours a day. And when I first got locked in the cell, I thought it was over, but I just have this strong will of just keep persevering and keep trying. And one day I woke up in solitary and said, I'm gonna try to break out of here too. And the one thing that I learned is that whenever you want something so much and you think about it over and over again, you're gonna attract that energy and support that you need in order to accomplish it. And I was able to do it.
When you broke out of jail, were you able to see your daughter, or you didn't get that far?
I didn't. I got caught before I could make it. So.
And then you ended up spending how long in jail?
A total of 16 years, 16 and a half.
16 and a half years. So in those 16 and a half years, so what's the biggest thing, like what's the biggest lesson that you've learned being in that type of environment, and what do you use and take with you on a daily basis now?
I learned a few lessons this time around, and one of them is how precious time is. And I also learned that sometimes it's not how much time you have, it's about how impactful your time is. Because you can have a month of being productive and happy, which can erase 30 years of being unproductive and sad. You're not going to remember those 30 years. It's like how you end is the most important thing. So it's like when you make a lot of mistakes and you waste a lot of time in your life, you can just one day of happiness and productiveness that can impact humanity can make up for 30 years wasted time. And so I learned the value of being productive and the value of the moment and not living in the past or even living in the future, but just living in the moment, and how that's the most valuable time you have. That's one thing that I learned. And I also learned that, again, if you really want something and you immerse yourself into those thoughts, then you will attract whatever it is you're consumed with.
Introducing this luxury box from Heavenly Scents that is guaranteed to captivate your senses. From candles that illuminate your evenings to waxes and sprays that envelop your home in serenity, Heavenly Scents is more than just fragrance, it's an experience. Shop Heavenly Scents today.
I think that's so beautiful, being present, being in the moment, not focus so much on the future and the past, being right here, right now, and being present. I think that's so huge. I think a lot of us, even myself, I've become a victim to that, always wanting to look ahead or look back, and we have to be present right here and right now.
Yeah, even like with me traveling here and like everything I went through, get, stranded in Florida, and I could have looked at like, okay, I'm gonna miss the podcast, and that would have just had me in this negative space. But one thing I learned from prison is just being able to be free in the moment. And every moment outside of prison is a moment of freedom for me. So being stranded in the airport, that was a moment that, I made the most of it. I didn't worry about, what was not going to happen or what was going to happen in the future. And I think that's how things worked out. I ended up here. So we always get where we're supposed to be. If we just don't panic and we just live in the moment and be positive.
Be not anxious. Know that it's going to happen. Yeah, I love that. I want to take a mental health moment because here at You Mean a Cup of Tea, we are all about brewing resilience, and we shed a lot of light on mental health. I want to know how you're taking care of your mental health now after experiencing incarceration and your freedom being taken from you. What did you have to heal from mentally, and how do you take care of your mental health now?
I'm still in the process of doing that. I think it's an ongoing thing. Again, I grew up in this culture of gangs and drugs and violence in prison, and it became normal, and I became desensitized to a lot of it. And so a lot of things that happen in the average person's life, it doesn't bother me as much. And so some people start to think like I'm a robot at times, so I struggle with that a little bit. And I just one thing is just my daughter, she's taught me a lot on how to be patient, how to be more sensitive, and how to be more, because when I got out, I got full custody of her. And I went from this hardcore prison environment where you're not supposed to express any emotion to being in a house during COVID with a 15-year-old girl at the peak of all of her emotions. And so I had to learn how to be patient, how to be empathetic, and how to be sensitive. And again, it was a learning experience, and it was a pleasurable feeling because it was giving me a moment to find peace within myself. And so one thing that I try to do is I live in the moment, and I try to just take in other people's thoughts, other people's opinions, other people's feelings. And not that I let it direct me, but I try to find understanding in it on a daily basis. And that's how I deal with the trauma that I've been through. Because it's really just about understanding and having empathy for other people. That's how we become better.
I love that. Understanding people and allowing people to be who they are, have their own opinions. Yeah, I love that. I want to know, you got out in 2020. And since then, your life has changed drastically. Tell me what has been the steps to your life changing drastically since you've gotten out of jail?
I still like to give my daughter credit for everything because she gave me a different purpose for living. And she made me realize that life was not solely about me, but more so about her, about the offspring, about the generations to come. And what can I do to better that? What can I do to make it easier for young Black people? Because we've had it hard. How can I contribute to making their future better rather than doing something that's going to make it worse? And so I give her credit, but the movie has been really big. I think it put me on a platform and kind of gave me a little recognition, something that I would have shied away from in the past because I hated talking to people. I hated cameras. I didn't like any of that stuff. But I realized that I have a story and I have a purpose. And in order for me to be successful at that, I have to embrace communicating and talking to people and sharing my story.
Boscoe was such a good movie. And if anyone has not seen Boscoe yet, it's on Peacock. When someone reached out to you while you were in jail still and told you that they wanted to do this movie about your life, what were you thinking at first?
I was thinking it was bigger than what it really actually. Once you understand the film industry, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be huge. I didn't know the difference between an independent producer and the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, okay, a studio, I'm going to make millions and millions of dollars. I'm going to be like a blockbuster film or whatever. But as time went on and there was no progress with the film, it was, I started learning like, okay, this is just an independent producer who loves my story and hope to be able to bring it to light. So we were kind of stuck at a standstill. And then when I and one of the reasons is like the director wanted to shed light to my story to kind of create this movement to help me get out of prison. But when I ended up getting myself out of prison early and I was able to get out, that's when everything changed, because now that I was out, I became a producer and I started networking and using my connections and resources to help raise the money to produce the film, started putting the cast together, and everything started to come together. And that's where I really learned how the film industry worked and the difference between an independent producer and a studio.
And since the movie has come out, what are some other things that you're doing to, give back? You said that you want to be this light for kids and, Black children like, you were. What are you doing in the community?
I do a lot of speaking. I think that's where I have my biggest impact. I go inside of prisons, been inside of juvenile halls where I started at, sharing my story and showing how I was able to transition and how I was able to reform and make something great of what seemed to be a wasted life. And I think that gives a lot of inspiration to them guys who are stuck in there and think that it's over. They realize that time is really a blessing, even in prison. If you got it, use it wisely and think positively and start preparing for something great. So I do a lot of speaking. I have a nonprofit foundation, Chasing Freedom Foundation, work with the ICANN Youth Foundation. And anytime people call me to come out and share my story and try to inspire people, I think that's my purpose.
That's awesome. I love that. What does it feel like to know that God had a purpose and a big plan for your life? Because I think we get stuck in the fiery pit sometimes, for lack of a better word, and we can only see the situation or the experience that's in front of us right now. What does it feel like to know that after your suffering and your pain, God had a purpose and a big plan for you?
It feels liberating. It's freedom. Because you realize that you don't have to worry about a lot of things. Sometimes you just got to quit fighting your purpose. Often we try to take things into our own hands and we think that we're supposed to go a direction that other people are going or that other people are telling us to go. We tend to try to be followers and we want to be like everybody else that we see. But in actuality, we all have our own unique purpose in life. And none of them look alike. And once we realize that, and we just start going with following our soul rather than our minds, then I think that's when you find your purpose and you find freedom.
Being able to know what your purpose is huge, because I think a lot of people, like you said, we fight our purpose and we have to start embracing what God has for us. And like you said, most of the time you don't have to worry. It's going to happen. I want to know what you would tell anyone that's been in your situation or still in your situation, incarcerated. What's advice that you would give them to get through it mentally, as well as get through it physically?
That today is not the end. It's not just about today. You have tomorrow. And the thing about it is, like, most of our struggles that we're going through are meant to help direct us where we're supposed to go. So if you're finding discomfort and you find yourself in situations like that, then it's probably time to do some introspection, try to find out where you went wrong and what you can do better. And one thing you have to always do is you have to realize that it's not about you. You have to start putting other people first. And once you start putting other people first, then you find your mission in life. And, you know, time is really on your side, especially when you're in prison. Like, that's a place for you to get rid of bad habits and create good habits. You know, instead of just doing push-ups all day, start working on your soul, start working on your habits. Get rid of the anxiety that you have and quit getting caught up in the moment of want instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
That's really it right there. We're always trying to get it now.
Yeah.
And getting it now will put you in a bad predicament sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that being incarcerated, facing a 35 years to life in jail and spending 16 and a half years in prison is a lot for any human to experience. And I'm grateful that you can share your story now and inspire other people, let people know that are in the same position that he is in, that you can get out and you can make purpose out of your life. I think that when you're in that system, people get stuck in that cycle. They get out, they go back in because that's the only thing that they know. And you are showing people that that's not all it has to be. And I love that. Thank you for sharing your story.
It goes beyond prison also. It's just in general. A lot of people are in prison out here in society, caught up and stuck in that cycle is because we're expecting things that's not really meant for us. And once we realize, again, like, we're here to live for each other. We're here to build for humanity. Once we realize that, then we'll start finding freedom, and we'll realize that a lot of our struggles are really just meant to direct us. Like, so when we're going through things out here, always try to remain positive because that's not the end. You might think this is the end, but it's not the end. Like, just stick through it and you realize that what you went through was really making you a better person.
So good. It builds strength. It gives you what you need for the next level.
If you don't have it, you won't find character. Character is found with conflict. That's how you find out who you really are. Once you have to go through those struggles. If you've never been through a struggle, you don't know who you are.
Who did you find out you were?
Who did I find out I was? I found out that I was the person to go through that struggle, come out with a smile on my face, come out still with the same compassion or even greater, come out without a bitter bone, and to show people that young Black men who come from communities like mine, who have been through everything that we've been through, that doesn't define who we are, that we can overcome that and we can be better and we can still be positive and be productive no matter about 20, 30 years caught up in that lifestyle. That's not who we are. That's a distraction. That's something that's keeping us away from finding out who we really are.
That is so good. You better
so I found out that I'm the person who had to go through that and come back and say, hey, that's not who we are. We're being duped.
Yeah.
You know?
You got the testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have the testimony to show. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you so much for coming out here, joining us and sharing your story. Like, people need to hear this, and I pray just amazing life and being present in the moment for you from now on, because time is so precious.
Yeah, and a cup of tea.
Yeah, and a cup of tea. Cheers to that. Thank you. Yeah. Let everyone know where they can follow you and connect with you, and where they can get your book from.
They can connect with me on Instagram, Quawntay Boscoe on Instagram, or go to my website, QuawntayBoscoeAdams.com. That's QuawntayBosco.
All right. Thank y'all so much for coming to another episode of You, Me, and a Cup of Tea. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you in the next one. And make sure you shop the tea.